very exciting panel with some awesome entrepreneurs. So let me move this forward. So today we are going to be talking about, that's me, is unlocking capital pathways for women entrepreneurs. So Catherine Hildrich, Senior Director here at TEDCO, and I manage the venture funds, which means that I'm doing usually Series A and up, but some late seed. And I have the fortunate job of working with amazing entrepreneurs. So if you don't know about TEDCO by now, it's 1:30 in the afternoon, but I'll just review a few things. Because I've got my colleague here, Jean-Luc, who works on pre-seed, so that's usually very early, and also our social impact. My boss is here, so I have to do a good job. Our CI, Chief Investment Officer, Jack Miner. And then I've got a lot of my colleagues here as well, joining us, Terry, Justin. So let's talk about raising capital. So, it's really tough because you may have a great idea, you're an entrepreneur, you've got a big market, and you know that your product or your service is something that's needed. There's a pain point, you've solved it, great. Okay, but you need money. And that's the one of the biggest hurdles out there, right? So what we wanted to talk about today is especially if you're a woman raising money, we all know the statistics. It's single digit. I've heard 1%, I've heard 3%, doesn't matter, it's all terrible. Because, we all know successful entrepreneurial women. And their journey of being an entrepreneur sometimes looks very different. There is no safety net. And sometimes there's no friends and family because you're the only successful one. So you don't have your friends and family around, doesn't happen, and you have to bootstrap. And women also there's just a lot of evidence and research that women end up bootstrapping a lot more because they aren't able to access capital. I realized, I was looking the other day that, in some places, even in the US, women couldn't get bank accounts or credit cards till 1971. And that was shocking to me. So what's great about millennials and our younger next generation is that they've grown up with women going to college, women being business owners, women having bank accounts. And so their mindset is completely different. But it's just amazing that it wasn't that long ago. But what I'd like to do first, though, is these are 3 of my portfolio companies. So we have invested in them. And I wanted them to talk a little bit about their background. Because one of the things is when I was 20, and if someone said, "Are you going to be a venture capitalist one day?" I would have said, "I don't even know what that is." I thought it was going to be like a fitness superstar. And here I am. So what's interesting to me is to find out, okay, we know where you are today. You're going to talk about your companies, but how did you get here? What was it that made you pivot, to use a venture capital word, and how did you arrive here? So, and all of them have very interesting and different backgrounds. So let's start first. So please, let's start with you first. Elaine, tell us about, what's your background? Where did you go to school? What did you study? And then how did you get here? Oh, maybe it's not on, sorry. Are any of them working?
That's your room monitor's fault there. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Jack. Great. So, hi everyone. My name's Elaine Haynes. I'm a pharmacist by training, and not a particularly entrepreneurial track, but I knew I wanted to go into chemistry and healthcare. Didn't particularly want patient contact, and pharmacy looked like a good opportunity. So that's where I landed. I specialized in nuclear pharmacy, which is a really obscure type of pharmacy practice, and that led me to a 28-year career at a multi-billion-dollar global medical imaging company where I led the medical imaging business and commercial organization. Got my MBA along the way, and it was at a time when the business was becoming more mature and competitive, and my company decided to sell it off. So I was in charge of divesting the businesses that I had led 3 divestitures. And at that point in my life, I'm thinking, okay, this is not why I went into healthcare to, raise prices and lay people off and close plants and kill good R&D projects because they weren't on strategy. There's got to be something else I can do with my background and my business degree. So I started hanging around an incubator. At that time, we were in St. Louis, and went on board as an EIR, entrepreneur in residence, helping startups, a lot of them coming out of Washington University, and just loved that, working with entrepreneurs that had this great technology and helping them develop their commercialization plan and get in front of investors. And along the way, I came across the company that I now lead, Kaylocyte, which means beautiful cell, and we're developing an artificial red blood cell substitute for use when blood's not available. It's shelf-stable, for long-term storage, so our vision is to have it in every ambulance, every medevac helicopter, every remote clinic, and Army medic backpack for use when needed for a bleeding patient and blood's not there. So a long way from pharmacy, but as soon as I saw the technology, I knew this was a company that was well-positioned to impact patient lives. They have phenomenal science. We have phenomenal science. I'm blessed with or cursed with 3 co-founders that are very well-connected and experts in their field that are making this product a success. So that's how I got into entrepreneurship. Again, not the journey that I had anticipated, but I was always open to taking on new special projects and always very curious and taking initiative. And sometimes that worked out well, and sometimes I learned that, okay, no, I don't want to do that, or I'm not good at that. And here we are.
That's great. Carol. Okay. I think that, yeah, it's working good. Okay, so I'm Carol S.B. Wilson. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I did my undergraduate study at Stanford and my graduate work at MIT. And I became a professor at Boston University first before moving here in 2001. And I'm currently at University of Maryland, College Park in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department and the Institute for Systems Research. And I toyed with starting a company back when I was a professor at BU. I actually worked with a couple of students from Harvard Business School. They helped me put a business plan together, but ultimately decided the timing wasn't right. More so personally, because I was on a tenure track and I had twin girls. And it was just gonna take, and I'm a professor, so it was just gonna be way too much time. So, and I wasn't sure, if it was a definite, I would have done it, but I wasn't sure that it was for speech recognition at the time. There were few platforms, so there wasn't a lot of competition between companies for things, and so they could decide to kind of limit me in terms of what I could charge. So I wasn't sure it would be profitable and worth my time. Then here at UMaryland, so I have a research program with PhD students, and attended a NSF workshop where they were trying to figure out the future for speech research. And I do everything, all of my stuff is digital speech processing. So things like speech recognition, speaker recognition. We're now doing things like assessing mental health based on speech, all kinds of things, right? So at that time, deploying these technologies in everyday environments was failing tremendously because of all the noise. And so because I thought I brought a unique perspective to it, the research group at MIT was very special. It was very interdisciplinary, not just engineering, but science-focused as well. Understanding the brain, how we perceive, produce. So a lot. You have a very holistic approach. So I thought I might be able to do something novel there. And got talked into starting a company when we did a demo that my dean asked me to do because of some patent applications we put in, and got a lot of feedback. A lot of people wanting to helped me start a company. And we had a venture accelerator program at the time, and I decided to work with them to start the company. Had it not been for that program, I probably would not have done that, because thinking like a business person is totally different from what you do as a professor. With a professor, you're open about everything. You're trying to publish everything, tell everybody about it, and that's not what you do when you're a business person. So having that support helped me to start my company, and that was removing background noise or minimizing it so people can hear you clearly across various communication devices. And we've had some success there, but we're starting to do a pivot and have really exciting results for deepfake, being able to tell real speech from synthesized speech. And so I'm going to be soon fundraising for that, because the results are like hot off the press. And we're well above 96% average rate in being able to do that. And that comes really out of my speech, my research as well. So again, and I'm thinking what we're doing is very unique. Again, just because of the approach we're taking, I don't think that people would be able to figure out what we're doing, and I don't think that deep learning algorithms will be able to mitigate against what we're doing. Even if they understand what we're doing, I don't think they can train them to make them pick up on what we're doing. So I'm feeling very excited about that. And, but I'll stop there. Oh,
Fascinating. Hi, my name is Elise Wang. It's hard to come after these two brilliant women, but I am the CEO, co-founder of Le Prix, which means the prize in French. It's a double entendre. It also means the price. So Le Prix today is a B2B platform where we help retailers source authenticated pre-owned luxury from professional suppliers around the world. So most of our customers are retailers, and I didn't realize I wanted to be an entrepreneur either. I'm a product of immigrant parents from Taiwan. As you know, with any immigrant parents, I really had three career choices growing up: to be a doctor, a pharmacist, or a lawyer. And I bombed biochem to my dad's chagrin, because he's got a PhD in biochemistry. And so my path was to go to law school. And so I went to law school at Catholic University. I went to University of Michigan undergrad and then Catholic University law school, and I liked it. I found my inner nerd, and I really enjoyed being a lawyer for 7 years. And one thing I did discover where I got an entrepreneurial bug was, one thing that lawyers and entrepreneurs have in common is to solve problems. And so I saw a problem in one of my favorite hobbies, which is high-end thrifting, and visiting these wonderful designer secondhand boutiques around cities that I traveled to do depositions and whatnot. Realized that these small business owners this industry had not a lot of innovation or tools to grow their business. And so I got the entrepreneurial bug, and that itch never went away, and went on to start a side hustle where I wrote this business plan on how to bring this secondhand world together. It's highly fragmented, little businesses, and wanted to create like an Amazon for people to shop. Did that, got some traction on the side, then took the leap. Got into an accelerator program called 1776. I don't know, you guys remember that. And out of, I think it was 5 or 6 companies, and we were the only female-founded company. We're the only ones still like thriving, and who survived and thrived, out of the 5 companies that were male-founded, which is, we beat the odds, I guess, in several ways, but I'm very proud of that. It's the same accelerator company that also nurtured Hinge. And that's when I discovered, oh, there's this community of, startups. And then, we were a B2C company, like consumer facing to start. And then we met TEDco. And TEDco, at that point, we were pivoting. And it was a scary thing because what we saw on the platform was that our boutique partners were buying from each other at full pricing. And then we realized there was a supply chain issue. Yes, they could get a lot of dresses and they could get a lot of shoes, but they also were having a hard time sourcing handbags. So like the brand name handbags, like use Louis Vuitton or use Chanel, we tend to hang on to those things longer. But in order to grow a business, you have to have the right things at the right pricing. So they started to transact on our platform. Then we started taking, we basically started this B2B side of the business in Google Sheets. It crashed. And then we pivoted in 2019, which has become Lepre today, a B2B platform for retailers to source pre-owned luxury. And yes, along the way, we've had to raise money, and TEDco has been a really important support system in this journey, and excited to be here.
Great. So one of the next question was, did you always want to be an entrepreneur? All of you kind of answered that, which is interesting how, you just don't know sometimes in life where things can lead you. You can have your 5-year plan, but things pivot in life or opportunities, present themselves. So one of the things, though, is I want to make sure everybody really understands, because each of you have something that's unique about your company, and maybe we could just dig into that a little bit more. Let's start actually with you first, Carol. Just how there's obviously buzzwords around AI and things like that, but how do you protect what you have? And, could you talk about your patents and, what makes, I wrote the memo, so I could tell you why OmniSpeech is awesome, but let our audience know a little bit more about exactly your technology.
Okay. Okay, so we have many versions of our noise suppression technology, because when you're going to put things in devices, you have to make it fit the chips that are in those devices. And phones have bigger chips than, say, headsets. So different chips have different amount of memory and computational complexity that you can have on those chips. So we have a range of different versions of our algorithm for those various different platforms. I would say that we started off as doing traditional signal processing. And then in 2017, I think AI started to become really big in engineering. It was big in computer science before it was really big in engineering. But it became really big maybe around 2014, 2015. And we switched everything over around between 2016 and 2017. That was totally a huge shift to make, because we didn't grow up with AI. And AI, we weren't trained in it. As a grad student, I wasn't trained in it. AI was very different then. We would have said we were AI, but that was because it was knowledge-based. It was based on knowing what humans were doing and putting that knowledge into technology, and that's what we used to call AI. That's not what AI is today at all. So AI is, being able to do these deep neural networks. You can have many, many, many layers in these networks, and the more layers you have, the more you can distinguish between things, because there's more nonlinearities. I don't want to get into all that, but you now have these really complicated models that takes a lot of data to train those models. When we were doing traditional, you didn't need a lot of data. You just need to understand what the data look like and be able to code and extract the right information. Deep learning is teaching the system how to extract the right information. And that's very tricky because it's not transparent like traditional is. It's a black box, so you have to figure out how to make the thing do what you want it to do. So anyway, we made that transition. So everything is pretty much AI. There's still some room for it, some traditional student processing, but it's all AI because it can perform so much better than traditional because there are these huge models and they have all this non-linearity. They can definitely, you know, if you're doing it traditional, you want a space where everything, you can have a line, everything's here and everything's there. With AI, you can draw really funky curves. There's no craziness from each other, right? If you have enough data, you can make it do amazing things. So you can get rid of a baby crying in the background completely, or a dog barking completely, where traditional you couldn't do that. So anyway, it took things to a whole new level, and we are doing everything pretty much AI now. Because not only was it at my company, but it was also with all of my grad students. Everybody's doing AI, you know, but now having to teach some stuff with AI, even though I never was trained in it myself. So you kind of burn through your students with that. But so, and we are early in terms of putting AI noise suppression on technology. So we have our technology and a Logitech headphone, and they had never done any AI noise suppression before. We were the first ones to put anything on their technology that's AI-based, for example. And then this new thing that I'm talking about with deepfake, that's AI-based as well. But using features, speech biomarkers, I will say, that we've developed that we think are unique and it's not anything that anyone else is doing. Right.
Can you patent that?
Yes. So you asked me about patenting. So some things we will patent, and then some things will be trade secrets. Because if you put everything out there, in a year or two, other people are going to be changing it a little bit and calling it theirs, right? And it's hard to know when people have infringed on you. And you even have to ask yourself, it's expensive to prove someone has infringed on you. Although there are companies that do that for you. They'll pay all the patent costs, but of course they'll take a significant amount of whatever you win with that. But that is a way to go with that if you are suspecting infringement. So there are things we will, like I said, we will definitely patent, and then other things that will be a trace of it.
Can I make a comment? I think the deep fake thing is so cool because my sister just told, did you guys hear about the story where somebody called a parent?
Oh yeah, this is happening a lot.
And said, I have your daughter, I kidnapped your daughter, you need to pay me like $10 million or something. And they said, well, put her on the phone, and it was her voice because they got it from social media.
But it was real, though. That was real, her voice.
It was
also a synthesized voice.
I thought it was an AI
No,
voice.
just asking.
Oh, it was a synthesized voice because they got it from social media. And then he was smart. He was like, okay, well, tell me what her birthday is or something. Tell me what, some secret knowledge.
Secret code word,
And he ignored it. But that is really cool what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, since let's go back into the pre. No, let's go back into. But how is it unique? And let's talk about your, because what you are providing now is B2B software. You're not actually selling the bags for your clients, but let's talk about that. And what does the competitive landscape look like? And what is your secret sauce really?
Yeah. So to just paint the picture. Secondhand is so mainstream now. 76% of millennials think about secondhand, or everybody in this room, used car, used furniture here on Facebook Marketplace, or finding used clothes or handbags. So it is still it's been around, but it's still very behind in terms of tech and data. So what we're doing is we're tech-driven, data-driven. And what we're doing is, yes, we're creating some sort of marketplace. We're not selling it to consumers, but we're unlocking the supply chain for this industry so that retailers can tap into it and create, and grow their business. Because as a lot of retailers are trying to figure out, how do I how am I going to be relevant to Gen Zers? And I don't know if you guys have any like kids, nieces or nephews. They're buying secondhand all the time. It's part of our lives, and it's good for the earth. So what we're doing is, the way we're using AI is, these are single SKU items, and in order for retailers and us internally, our internal operations, to be efficient and scalable, each bag, I see so many bags in here and items that can be instantly recognized by image recognition. But it needs to be matched with like good data, right? If you have bad data, it's garbage in, garbage out. But good data is so key to start with. And that way, if you think about a retailer that has an online presence, like let's say Bloomingdale's or Revolve.com, they want to sell pre-owned, and they are, but they need to put it on their website. So what we provide them is not only the product, but also the product details, so they can, like the measurements, the brand, the style, the materials, the color, and so they can put it on their website, quickly, and we give them pricing. And so the whole like game is, what makes, I think, a lot of companies successful is that value proposition of convenience and efficiency, and that's what we're really focused on building for our customer. They don't have to go through the pain of taking one used item, looking it up, figuring out like, okay, you get Google image, sure, but looking it up and then figuring out, okay, which one is the correct style? What is the right price that I need to sell this for to make my margin? So we're trying to make them, their pre-owned category more efficient. And so that has been important for Lepre, because our clients changed from secondhand shops, and we still have wonderful secondhand boutiques, independent boutiques, to public company enterprise level retailers, including Revolve.com and travel retailers like duty free shops. So it's really exciting to see that not only are people very interested in secondhand and all the water you're saving and the carbon emissions that you're saving from making that choice for secondhand, but it's very exciting to see that we can help unlock it for them. And yeah, it's been quite a fun journey.
So Elaine, let's go back and just dig in a little bit more, because there's a huge interest in the area you're working in, and there's blood substitutes, there's all kinds of things. But let's talk about how, Calisite is unique and what makes it unique in terms of its patents and what can you protect?
So Calisite is unique in a couple of ways. One is in our approach to developing a blood substitute. So fairly easy concept to understand. When a patient is bleeding, the best thing to replace is blood, natural blood. But blood has a very short expiration time. It's only good for a month from the time it's donated, and it needs to be refrigerated that whole time, and it's type specific. So for that reason, most ambulances don't carry blood. So what is needed is something that is shelf stable, that is a universal type option that can just be on the shelf and ready to go when needed. So there have been many attempts to develop a blood substitute, but they've all failed. So that's one unique aspect about my market, is that it is kind of littered with failed attempts, which isn't particularly helpful if you've got investors that invested in those failed attempts. And now you're asking, but no, we're different, really. But we are different, actually. So prior attempts failed for safety reasons and for effectiveness reasons. And that's because they didn't try to replicate a red blood cell, which is what carries oxygen in your body. So what they did is they just took the protein out of the middle of the red blood cell, hemoglobin. Having a nice little light show here, apologize for that. And and stuck multiple hemoglobin molecules together and injected it and expected it to work. Well, when hemoglobin doesn't have other parts of the cell to protect it from doing things it shouldn't do, or to signal it when to pick up oxygen and then when to let it go to hypoxic tissues, you're ended up with a product that is, in some cases, you're worse off than doing nothing for a patient. So that didn't work. So we learned from that. So our attempt is the only one currently in development that is both an encapsulated form of hemoglobin that mimics a red blood cell and how it works. And it can be freeze-dried for long-term dry storage and then just reactivated with water for instant blood, essentially, when you need it. So we have several patents. The initial patent was out-licensed from Washington University in St. Louis, where we were founded. We've since advanced beyond that initial technology to a company-owned patent. So we're protected there. And then there have been several improvements that we have developed since we've been located at the University of Maryland. So we have some joint IP with our research founders at Maryland. So we're well protected not only from an IP standpoint, and we've filed new IP as we've come up with new innovations. But there's also that technical know-how and trade secrets that, even if I publish the recipe for what goes in and how to make it, I mean, we struggle to make it consistently, day to day in the lab. So there's a lot of nuances and trade secrets with making the product. So that novel, I would say one other aspect that makes Calicite unique is that because we have what's called a dual-use technology, which means it has military interest and use as well as a civilian and commercial use, we have been very successful raising non-dilutive funding. So to date, we have $17 million in federal grant funding from NIH, Department of Defense, and DARPA, as compared to about $5.5 million in investor funding. So about 3 times as much non-dilutive funding as investor funding. That helps you with raising money from investors because they see that you've been able to raise non-dilutive funding, that you're, they understand that those are competitive processes. They see that Department of Defense and DARPA are backing your science and helping you achieve milestones and are a future customer. Mm-hmm. So that all has been tremendously helpful for us.
Well, speaking of fundraising, so you already started down that path. So I'd love for all of you to comment about it because, we all know that it's tough for everyone right now. I've been in the alternative investments, venture capital, family office investing world for 23 years. And I have never seen so much effort, even with established revenue generating companies. Thank you. And so it'd be great to hear about your fundraising journey, both from dilutive and non-dilutive, because obviously, there's interesting opportunities for you to get some of that non-dilutive capital, which is the best. I mean, that's one thing we always ask because, our capital is dilutive, and to us, it's also credibility building, because if you do have something from a DARPA or NIH or something like that, we have to do our own due diligence, of course, and make our own decision. But that's just like a piece of the one piece of information that we can look at and say, well, that's pretty good. They've already got that. And some of those grant processes are really difficult too. So it also shows the tenacity of the entrepreneur and how much dedication. So since we were already talking to you, Elaine, and because you've gotten non-dilutive funding from a couple different sources, and it can't be easy. So it'd be great to hear about both the non-dilutive and the dilutive capital that you've been able to raise.
Sure. So you're right. It's not easy to get grants, but once you are once you've won one grant, particularly NIH, our first major grant was an NIH Fast Track Award, which starts off as a phase 1, then goes into a phase 2. Then there's additional grant opportunities, that you are eligible for applying for. Plus, NIH in particular has been particularly helpful with other programmatic support. So there's a commercialization acceleration program. They have sponsored me to go to conferences. They connected me with one of my investors. NHLBI is our division that we're funded by, and knew that the New York Blood Center was starting a venture arm, and connected the two of us. So there's a lot of additional support that comes from the non-dilutive funding, but it's very time consuming, to write a full proposal. It takes a lot of time to, one, get it ready, get it in the system, wait for it to get reviewed. We've had proposals that have not been successful. Either they've not been reviewed or they didn't score high enough. Then you resubmit and hopefully come back. So it's just they're a lot of work. And then once you get them, then you have to administer them. There's reporting requirements, and you have to manage the invoicing and accounting. So but it's well worth it, absolutely well worth it. And like I said, it helped us with investors where they see that we've raised non-dilutive funding, and not only that we've already been successful raising non-dilutive funding, but for our product in particular, because it is one of the top priorities for Department of Defense and for BARDA from a health security standpoint, there is substantial follow-on funding that will be available to cover my clinical trials. So once I get into the clinic, then we're at a high enough development level that Department of Defense and BARDA can both help sponsor the trials. And for other companies in the space that are working on blood components, they've covered 100% of their clinical trial costs. Now, you still have to raise money for all of the other G&A and other company costs and to work on other indications, but that also helps with our fundraising because investors see that there's likely tens of millions of dollars available that they won't have to invest from an investor or dilutive standpoint that will help support.
So one thing, and I want to ask all of you this too, but are any of those grants related to being a woman or getting any kind of grants? No. Interesting.
I don't think they do a special program for SBIRs.
Right.
There is, we're in the process of filing for a diversity supplement with NIH, which helps fund the salary of a female scientist that we brought on board. So there is that help. I think there are some opportunities. We don't have enough female founders to qualify for all of those, though.
Yeah. So great. And I'd love Carol and Elise too. We want to understand what also in your fundraising journey, dilutive and non-dilutive, what worked, what didn't work, what's some advice you might have to some other women in your position?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll say that when we first started, we did a lot of going around to different venture capital companies. And one of the things I learned that I wish I had known before I started is that they're all very different from each other. Some people like to invest in deep tech, which is what I do is considered deep tech. Others don't want to invest in deep tech, but they want people who are going to take technology and figure out a way to make a business with it. So, and then there are people who want full stack. You have to be customer facing in order to get funding, and we're a B2B place. So we went to a lot of people that we shouldn't have been talking to because we didn't understand those differences when we first started. And, we were flying to California to go talk to people. So like, we wasted some money there not knowing that there are these big differences. So it's really worth it to do the homework to figure out what the particular VC fund is for. What do they fund? So what are their companies that they will invest in? I was fortunate that I have classmates that have done very well. So I was able to get angel funding to get me started. So that was good. and some family support as well. But I have had non-dilutive funding through the National Science Foundation and SBIR, phase 1, phase 2, and then what they call a phase 2B. And that was well over $1 million that came that way for that. I put in for an NIH SBIR recently. I didn't get it. And the program officer said, you've got to tell us your secret sauce to get it. I didn't want to do that because you don't know who the reviewers are. You don't know how they're going to use that information. But he said, Carol, you just got to do it, and you'll get the funding. So we're resubmitting for that one. But as you said, it's a lot of work to write a proposal, particularly an NIH proposal. It's much more difficult than an NSF proposal. It just requires a lot more preliminary work, too. And then, you got to wait for the reviews to come, and that's 6 months. And then sometimes people just totally don't get what you were trying to do. You say, and that's so frustrating. They just didn't have the right people on the panel to review the proposals. You have to go through that frustration, and then you got to wait another cycle. So that's the frustrating part with going through the government to get funding.
I can share my journey. Yeah, it hasn't been easy. I totally agree. For the equity side, I learned the hard way too. Went on talking to a bunch of VCs in California, the traditional VCs, and it was kind of like going after the brand names, and there was this whole culture of like, the more money you raise, the more badass you are. But that was the thing, and sometimes I guess it really still is, but I've learned the hard way that you do have to talk to, do your research. A warm introduction is the best way. It's learned the hard way, that you have to interview the investor as much as they interview you, because time is so valuable and you can't get it back. And so there's a lot of times where I wish I had asked, why is LaPrix, why is this company interesting to you? Do you have other portfolio companies that are in this space or relevant? What size check do you write? Don't be afraid to ask that. What is your process? And then they can go through it to see if their timing fits your timing. And what kind of, how do you see us like working together in the future? How do we grow together as a partner? Many times I was just going through, and there's a lot of associates out there, investment associates, who want to take that call. It's their job. They're doing research, they're filling their pipeline, and that's good, but it might not lead to the decision maker necessarily, and it does burn time. So the vetting process on your side, is just as important. And it was a soul-crushing journey, fundraising. The 2.2% of female founders raising is real. And I got to tell you, cash is not capital. Cash, it is not an equal opportunity, asset. It's just not. You have to go through so many walls. You have to increase the odds because the odds are against you. So you have to increase, by multiples, how many people you talk to. And because I wasn't the traditional, Silicon Valley, back of the napkin, cool kid, had a career before this. I wasn't able to connect and get that huge VC money. And, maybe I didn't meet the right people, but, female founders, they have to, it's not unusual to have to scrape it together, be scrappy from friends and family. And, a lot of female founder businesses, I think, have an unusual looking cap table that is not a traditional cap table that Silicon Valley investors are used to seeing. They're like, oh, I want a clean, 3-line or less than 10, line cap table. No, you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
And
Survive.
to survive. That's, and that's more form over substance. But, the stats also say, female founders will return 78 cents more than male founders. And maybe part of the journey of like learning to be scrappy and multitasking and everything, that's a really good stat. So, for the equity side, it is tough, and you got to have grit. And I wouldn't focus too much on the 2% because it can get in your head. But it's a journey, and it's even tougher today. So the non-dilutive funding is very interesting. And for us, we're not a science-based company or deep tech, but non-dilutive funding for us means working capital, venture debt, getting financing from lenders. And non-dilutive capital in that regard is just kind of like paying expedited shipping. Like, it's expensive because you're not qualified you're not a mature company yet. Even though we are EBITDA positive, like, we still don't qualify for the premium rates, of less like 8% plus prime or prime plus 1, or whatever, bigger companies would be able to get. So, you are going to pay a price. It's more expensive capital, but at least it's non-dilutive. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I'm still learning a lot. Yeah, always. But yeah, it's always good to hear other people's stories on how they got it done.
And I will add one other thing is to make sure you understand what type of company they will invest in terms of, do you have to be a C Corp or can you be an LLC? Because a lot of times people start off as LLCs. They may eventually go over to a C Corp. But we got way down the road with the large women's fund that you know about, Catherine, and only at the point where we're getting ready to have the transaction, they don't invest in LLCs. They only invest in C Corps.
I'd like to amplify that. You learn along the way what questions to ask, and you're right. I mean, VCs are very open with what's their check size, what's their process, but asking, like from our perspective, do you invest in preclinical products? Do you invest in therapeutics? And if they don't, then then we don't meet. But finding those investors that that will invest in your stage and your sector is step one. What check size, and the thing that we've been probably struggling with the most is finding an investor who will lead an equity round. Mm-hmm. I have a list of dozens, literally dozens of investors that have said, we love what you're working on. We want to invest, but we don't lead. Call us when you have a term sheet and a lead. Now, I'm a big girl. I know that probably 2/3 of those are nice no's. And when I call them back and I say, hey, I have a term sheet, they'll be like, oh, sorry, we're not deploying funds right now or whatever. But finding someone who will lead is probably the toughest thing that we've faced here lately.
And what's so frustrating, right, is that every VC will tell you, or family office or whoever, oh, we do our own independent research. We do our own due diligence. We're not influenced by anyone. But then they want somebody else to have the lead, and it's like, well, so they simultaneously have fear of missing out, so FOMO, but they also don't want to be first.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
Let me ask you, do you think that's different because we're women-owned companies that we face more of that than?
I believe so. Coming from, I've been on both sides of the table, right? And I think, women are asked different questions than men are, and in the due diligence process. So I think, I think the view is that men can be, cavalier and risk taking, and they want to reward that. But if they're going to invest in a female-owned business, they want stability. They want
prototype.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they don't want someone who's a cowboy, you know? So I think that's different. But what I am hopeful for is, and we're seeing that already today, is that successful female entrepreneurs that have exits recycle that capital and invest in other female entrepreneurs. That's great. And there are funds that do that. I mean, we at TEDCO, we have funds that are specifically for SETI, which is socially economically disadvantaged, but there are also, you know, angel groups, like my angel group, Citrine Angels in DC, like we just invest in women. So it's interesting how just more and more there are capital, and just like you said in reviewing who the venture capital fund is before you go talk to them, or don't bother talking to them, yeah, there's new groups popping up every day, which is really exciting. So to me, it's that, yeah, then kind of recycling and giving back, because once you've gone through that entrepreneurial journey, then it's pretty exciting to be able to, you know, help somebody else go through it and gain as well. So we're going to be wrapping up in just a minute or two here. But one thing I wanted to ask you about too was, you know, being in Maryland, because I think all of you have lived in different places, and obviously your journey has led you here. So how has the DMV helped you? And, you know, would you recommend entrepreneurs to move here other than because TEDCO's so awesome?
That's an easy yes for me. And as I mentioned earlier, we started the company in St. Louis, and we specifically selected Maryland and Baltimore and moved here because we wanted better access to talent, better access to investors, and closer proximity to stakeholders. You know, so we are right by where, you know, the DoD is making decisions. We've got NIH, we've got FDA, we've got BARDA. Everybody's right here, and having that proximity allows for you to meet people face to face in settings like this. And you can't underestimate the value of having that personal contact and those relationships. And that's why, you know, the stuff that Department of Commerce and TEDCO are doing is so important, because it facilitates those interactions that you wouldn't have otherwise. And then when you have, you know, like at my friend contacted NIH that knew a new investor group was starting up and that was specifically looking for investment in areas like mine, was able to make that connection. That wouldn't have happened if we hadn't met. So, I mean, that networking, so being here, you're doing the right thing just by being in this room. But that is just invaluable. And particularly in Maryland, you know, I've been in other parts of the country. We also looked at going to Boston. We toyed for a minute with going out west. It's just not the same collaborative environment. You know, we've almost got a small town feel here in the DMV that I've just not seen replicated in other parts of the country.
Oh, yes. So I keep forgetting to put my mic on. Oh, I think it died. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry. So no, I think this is a really good area as well because of TEDCO, but also programs like FSC First through PG County. My company is on UMaryland's campus, so we're in PG County, and we've been able to benefit from some of their programs as well. I would say that I would love to have UMaryland have more money for programming to help professors that are starting companies. And there are other universities that are ahead of us because they've been doing it a lot longer. So Georgia Tech, for example, has been doing this a really long time. Stanford and MIT, those are schools I've been to, and so I know kind of what's happening there. We're coming along, but we still need more investment, especially in terms of patents, having enough money to patent everything that people think really could be a win. You know, but their dollars are so small, they have to really pick and choose what they're going to patent, for example. So those are some of the things I would like to see happen better at UMaryland. They do have other excellent programming going on in their building, but I'd like to see it come faster. And one thing I'd like to see is, I haven't reached out to TECO for this, and I wish I had, but I know there's got to be a really good community of people who want to help people do companies. You know, they've already been successful.
The network advisors.
And they could be network advisors.
And they made them be willing to come on as a CEO after being an advisor. I would love to see a list like that where, you know, you can engage with people a lot sooner, because it took me a while to find a CEO for my company. I did not want to be a CEO because I'm a professor too. That's a lot to juggle, trying to do both of those things. But it took me a while, and I would have loved to have had that like 10 years before I got it. So.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you both have said. This area, we're a global company, so we have an office in Bethesda, Maryland, in Japan, and in Paris. And this is an international area, which is great. And this area, I agree, there's lots of talent. There's a lot of smart people here, and they're serious, you know. I don't get asked, like, do you have a ping pong table, or like, do you have kombucha on tap? Like, it's serious. They want to work hard, and I love it. And it's a manageable city. It's like you said, it's like it's most powerful area in the world with so much, you know, talent and resources and high levels of education. But it does have a small town feel. And there are a lot of resources. I just need to get out more and like really do more. But yeah, it's exciting. It's great.
Yeah, and you got NIH and NSF right there. And before you submit a grant, it's always good to talk to the program officer. Let them know what you're thinking about submitting so they can give you feedback that can be helpful when you write the application. And you can actually go visit them in person because they're so close.
Yeah.
People from other states can't do that. So you should take really, you know, advantage of those sorts of people in your backyard.
Now, just to wrap up, since the floor is yours, what I'd like to do is find out each one of you quickly and let our audience know what's an ask you have of today. I mean, are you looking for a CFO or office space, or, you know, whatever it is, here you are, captive audience. Is there anything that our audience could help you with?
So we're focusing currently on accessing family offices and high net worth individuals, where, you know, VCs, we're kind of in that awkward in between stage right now until we have clinical data. And because of our mission focus, our story tends to resonate more with family offices, and we've been successful with a couple high net worth individuals, but looking to expand that. So if anyone has any connections, find me. Thank you.
Yes, we're getting ready to start fundraising for the deep fake technology. And so people that you know would be really interested in that. And one of the things I can say, you know, being a woman, and you never get to raise the $13 million. You get, I mean, I heard you all did that, that's great. But here's the it's like $1 million or 1.5 to last you. But you know, you can't really have everybody on board that you would like to have on board. And if you can do so many more things in parallel, you know, you can really fly. You never really feel like you can fly because you never have the capital to fly. You're always just making it, you know. And I want to get out of that mode. And so with the deep fake stuff, I'm hoping that enough people will be really excited about that we'll actually be able to get that out on the market really fast and, you know, bring on more talent to help us commercialize it a lot faster.
How many are investors here? Can you raise your hand? Okay. So,
No investment.
yes, I was just wondering. But I would say, you know, one ask is don't give up. You know, for investors, don't be afraid. Like, there's a lot of unbiased, conscious, you know, unconscious bias. I've been asked so many times, like, oh, let me ask my husband or daughter, or my wife or my daughter about this first.
Right.
It's like, you know, if Carvana pitched me, it's kind of like, oh, let me ask my husband and my son about this. So don't give up out there. It's just be patient. there's just a gap of understanding right now, and there's a lot more work to do to bring women up, investors too, female investors, venture, capitals that are focused on female founders. They're going through the same thing. It's hard to raise money to build a fund. So it's going to take time, but be that 2%. Or if you're an investor, be proud that you are participating in helping that 2% and growing that. And if you make it up to the top, don't forget to send the elevator back down and bring everybody else.
Exactly. Well said. Well, thank you to our fantastic panel of entrepreneurs.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.